Hello everyone and welcome to this video. So from this video we will be starting with discuss the importance of visualization using Excel charts. So let's get started. So we will be answering two questions in this video, that is, what are charts in Excel and why do we use them? Charts are nothing but the visual representation of the numerical data. Okay, so whenever we have numerical data in our Excel worksheets or in our presentations, it becomes visually much more appealing when we use charts to represent that numerical data. It also helps to make that data much more understandable. So whenever we are making a presentation or an Excel report and we are including some numerical data in that data makes much more sense when we represent that data in the form of a visual chart. So charts are nothing but the visual representation. Now there are various kinds of charts. Some of them are bar charts, line charts, pie charts. We will learn about each and every one of them in the future videos. For now, let's just understand that how the presence of a chart is going to elevate the understandability of our Excel worksheet. Let's say we have a numerical data here. So here we are discussing about quantitative data. Okay. So let's say in this table, we can see that from the year 2012 till 2021, let's say we are trying to track the number of new students who have been enrolled to our course. So this is a table where we get this data that from the year 2012 till 2021, number of new students who have been enrolled into our course. So we are representing this numerical data in the form of this table. Now, let's say we are representing the same numerical data in the form of this chart. So this is essentially a line chart. So I hope this makes much more sense to you that the maximum number of students that were enrolled, it was in the year 2021, whereas the minimum number of students that were enrolled was in the year 2012. Also, this chart makes it clear that there was an increase or there was a spike in the year 2013. So we can actually decipher much more information in depth from a chart rather than the representation of a numerical data in the form of this kind of table. Now just imagine that instead of such small data set, if we have millions of records, in that case the representation of such a data or such a numerical data in a visually appealing way in the form of a line chart or a bar chart or that kind of a chart that serves that purpose is going to make our presentation, Excel reports, much more understandable and professional as well. So with this background, we are going to start and we are going to move further into this module where we will be discussing more about charts in Excel in the future videos. So let's meet you there. Thank you. Hello everyone and welcome to this video. So in this video, we will be discussing about the basic chart elements. So let's get started. So in the previous video, we have already seen the data set. Now I have made some changes to that data set. So now on the right hand side, that is this part right here, we have our data set. Okay. So what we are essentially saying here is, here we have the years, okay, starting from 2012 till 2021. And here we have the number of new student registrations, and we also have one more metric, which is the conversion percentage, which essentially means that out of those many new registrations, how many students have actually registered or enrolled into the course, or how many students have actually made the payment, and that is essentially the conversion percentage. Now we are representing that data, that numerical data, in the graphical format with the help of this chart. Okay, now this is basically a compound chart because it contains both vertical columns as well as a line chart. So it contains both bar charts, vertical bar or column charts we can call them, and line charts. Okay. Now, the horizontal line right here is known as the horizontal data axis. So this particular line right here where we have the years plotted is nothing but the horizontal data axis. Okay, and each point here represents the horizontal data axis label. Like each year right here is nothing but the horizontal data axis label. Now, this registrations and conversion percentage data is known as a data series, and each individual point here is called a data point. So you can understand a data series is basically a combination of multiple data points. Okay. Now we have discussed about the horizontal data axis. We also have vertical data axis. So one right here on the left is basically our primary vertical data axis, whereas on the right here we have our secondary vertical data axis. Okay. Now why we are having two data axes right here? So one on the left is basically for the number of students who have registered to our course, whereas one on the right is basically the conversion percentage. So our primary vertical data axis is basically represented in the form of these vertical column bars, whereas our secondary vertical data axis is basically represented in the form of this line chart. Okay. Now why we are having two vertical axes? That is because you can see there is a huge difference in the numerical value between the registration and the conversion percentage. So conversion percentage is basically a number in decimal, and if we would have plotted that value as the primary vertical axis, that line would have stayed so close to the bottom horizontal line that it would not even be visible. In that case, it would not have been a very good visual representation of the data. And that is why we are having two vertical axes. So on the left one, which is our primary vertical axis, we are basically representing the number of registrations. Whereas on the right, which is the secondary vertical axis, here we are representing the conversion percentage, which is basically represented in the form of this line chart. Now each number here is known as the vertical axis label. So this is our primary vertical axis label, and this is going to be our secondary vertical axis label. Similarly, here we have our horizontal axis labels. Now here, this highlighted box right here is basically the legend. It gives us the information that the blue column bar represents the student registration, whereas this red line, it represents the conversion percentage. Okay. We also have the horizontal and the vertical axis labels. Like you can see, this is our registration and this represents the years, and this one is basically for the conversion percentage. We also have the chart title right here, which gives us the information or the heading that regarding what this chart is all about. So this is our chart title. Now we also have these numerical values, if you carefully notice above this line chart, and these are known as the data labels. Okay, so they represent the magnitude of this particular point. So each data point's magnitude is represented by these data labels. Okay. Next, you can also see that we have these horizontal lines right here. So these are known as the horizontal grid lines. So these are the horizontal axis grid lines. So they actually help us to determine the magnitude. Okay. For instance, if you look at this data, that is the data for the number of registrations made in the year 2018, you can see that it is just past this 800 line mark. So it tells me that the number is somewhat greater than 800. Okay, so if I just refer to the table data set that we have right here, so you can see, yes, for the year 2018 the actual value is 850. So in this way we can actually determine an estimate of the magnitude. Again, for 2017, if we see that it actually touches the 800 line mark exactly. So if we just refer to our table, we can see that yes, for the year 2017 the number of student registrations were actually 800. Now this entire area which is enclosed by this black box is known as the chart area, that includes all the elements of chart. And we also have something called a plot area, that is this inner square right here, this inner rectangle right here, which includes the data plot, the data points and the axis. Now, why we are trying to learn all of these different elements or different Excel chart nomenclature? And that is so because Excel has independent formatting options for each of these elements which constitute a chart. Okay, like if I just click on this plus icon, you can see that I can choose the visibility for each of these chart elements, so on and so forth. We can actually also format all these chart elements. So remembering this might seem to be a daunting task, but just keep up with me. We will be discussing a lot more about charts in the successive videos. So these were all the basic elements of any chart that I wanted to discuss. Let's meet in the next video. Thank you. Hello everyone and welcome to this video. So before moving ahead, to the other videos where we are going to discuss how we can create impressive charts from scratch. In this video, we will discuss how we can easily create charts in Excel with just a single click. Now remember, creating charts in Excel is definitely very easy, but to create impressive charts that properly convey the information that you want to convey to your viewer is difficult, and that skill we will be learning in the future videos. For now, we are just going to see how we can create a very basic and simple chart just to get started with charts in Excel. So here you can see we already have a data set. Okay, so here we again are using the same data set where we have the year starting from 2012 to 2021, and we have the number of new student registrations. So let's say I just want to create a chart, simple chart for this particular data set. So what I can simply do is we can go to the insert tab that we have in the ribbon, click on that, and there you have this option which says recommended charts. Okay, so once you click on it, what Excel does is it is going to recommend you charts on the basis of your data set. So like you can see, it's first going to recommend me a line chart, and it also gives me a preview how is this going to look. Okay, you can also select a clustered column chart or a scattered plot, stacked area. So we will discuss about these kinds of charts in details in the future videos. For now, let's just pick this line chart for now. So I'm going to click on OK, and now you can see Excel has very efficiently provided or created this chart from our data set. Okay, and it has also understood that what we actually want to be in the horizontal axis, what we want to be in the vertical axis, as well as what should be the chart title. Although you can still make changes, you can still, like, I can just double click on this chart title text box and I can make changes to this, but Excel has very nicely understood that what we want where. Okay, you can also see the horizontal grid lines. Okay, now Excel also provides you some by default layout and formatting or design options for this kind of chart. So what we can do is, for example, now I just click on this chart and you can see that we can make actually changes to the format as well as to the chart design. Okay, so you can make changes to the layout by clicking on this option which says quick layout, and in this way you can actually change your chart layout. Okay, similarly, we can also select a particular chart style. Like if I just click on this drop down, you can see we already have some predefined chart styles. Like this one, the background is blue, whereas the line as well as the axis, the horizontal and the vertical axis, all of these are written in white. Similarly, for this one, it does not have any horizontal grid lines. So here we can actually decide what kind of chart style or chart design we want. So let's go with this one. So this is a simple way in which you can very easily and very quickly create a chart from a data set that you have. Now definitely this is an easy tool to use, but we will be rarely using such kind of tools because we will be learning how to create much more impressive and descriptive charts from scratch in the future videos. So let's meet you in the next video. Thank you. Hello everyone and welcome to this video. So in this video, we are going to learn about column charts. Now you can see that here we have a data set where we are basically comparing the sales of pencils versus pens over these months starting from January to July. And here we have the sale for pencils and here we have the sale for pens. And based on this data set, we have got this chart. Now this chart is called a column chart. Okay, like any other chart, you can see that here we also have the horizontal axis, which is basically the months. Okay, it represents all the months for which we have the data points. We have the data series, and here we have the vertical axis which is present on the left. So here we are only working with one vertical axis. We can also call it the primary vertical axis. Okay, and each point on this vertical axis is basically a representation of the value. And now you can see that here we are having two color columns. So this basically represents two distinct data sets, okay, or two distinct data series. So we use column charts whenever we want to compare the values, or we want to compare the trend between two distinct objects. Like here we are comparing the sales for these months for pencils versus that of pens, okay. So for that, what we are doing is we are using a column chart, and as you can see from the legend right here, the blue columns or the blue bars represent the sale of pencils, and the orange ones represent that of pens, okay. And the height of these columns represent the magnitude of the value, and we already know that how these horizontal grid lines help us. Like for example, if I want to check that what was the sale of pencils for the month of January, I can see that this blue line accurately touches this horizontal grid line for which the data point is 8,000. So I can say that the sale for pencils in the month of January must be 8,000, and now I can validate from my data set as well, yes, it was 8,000, okay. So we can use column charts whenever we want to compare trends between two or more distinct objects. Now from this column chart, what you can say is that always for all of these months, the sale of pencils was greater than that of pens. And also, while we can see that the sale of pencils have been on a rise, the sale of pens have decreased gradually, okay. So all of these we can infer from these charts. Now there are different kinds of column charts available. Let's just have a quick look at that. So what I can do is, like anytime we want to create a chart for a particular data set, I can just select the data set, and then I can just go to the insert tab in the ribbon, and here this option is basically for the column chart or bar chart. So now if I just click on the drop down, you can see all the different variations of the column chart. So the chart that we have here is a clustered 2D column chart, okay. Now there are other variations in 2D charts as well. Like here we have a stacked column chart. So you can see that the blue column and the orange columns are stacked on one another. Similarly, here we have 100% stacked columns. So here the value is represented in the percentages. So you can see that in the left, in the primary vertical axis, the values are represented in the form of percentages. Now you can also have 3D column charts, which is just the same as that of a 2D column chart, just the representation is done in a 3D axis. So this is a 3D clustered column chart. You can have 3D stacked column charts as well. You can have the 3D 100% stacked column chart, where again the magnitude is going to be represented in terms of percentages. Now like here we are having column charts, you can also have bar charts, which are just going to be represented in a horizontal fashion. So since we are working with two distinct objects, we are using clustered charts. So here you can see this is a horizontal clustered bar chart. Similarly, we can have stacked bar charts, so on and so forth. Then we can also have 3D bar charts as well, okay. Now we are going to see that how we are going to create this clustered column chart from scratch. Now what we will do is, first we will delete this chart that we have right here. So I'm just going to select this chart, press the delete key on my keyboard, and now the easiest way to create a chart is I'm just going to select the data set that I have here, and here we have this option which is going to help us with our column chart. So I'm just going to select the first option right here, and we can click on it, and now you can see that we have got our clustered column chart. Now you can just make some modifications, like you can edit the chart title here, you can increase the size of your chart, or if you want to change the layout or maybe the chart style, you can do that from here. Now the problem with such kind of pre-made charts is that suppose you want to add an additional column to this particular chart, or maybe I want to add another month to the data set. These modifications or customizations cannot be done easily, and that's why we will be learning how to create such kind of column charts from scratch. So what we will do, I will again delete this chart right here. Now I will not select the data set like earlier we were doing. I'm just going to go to the insert tab right here, and again go to the column chart, and we are just going to select this option. So here we have got the blank chart area, and now we will be starting creating our chart on this, okay. Now once I select this blank chart area, you will see that we actually get two additional tabs enabled. One is the chart design, another is the format, okay. So with these two tabs, we can actually make modifications to our chart. So what we need to do is we need to click on this option which says select data. You can also find this option if you right click on this blank chart area. Even here you can see this option which says select data. So now what we will do is you can see that in this particular dialog box we have two sections. One is the legend entries, that is the data series for the legends, and one is the axis label, horizontal category axis labels. So first let's look at the legend entries. Okay, so what we are going to do is first we are going to click on add. Okay, and now the first series name is basically going to be that of the pencils. Okay, so for the series name I'm going to select this cell. Okay, and now for the series values, what I need to do is I'm going to select all the cells which are going to have the data series values for this particular data series, that is that of pencil. So I'm going to select all of these cells right here. And now you can see in the background, we have already got the sale of pencils plotted. So I can just click on OK. And now what we need to do is, so we have already got one data series plotted. Now we need to add the other data series, which is basically the sale of pens. So again, the same thing, I'm going to click on add. And now the series name is going to be pens. So I'm going to select this cell which has pens written in it. Okay. And now for the series values, what I need to do is I need to again select all of these cells that have the sale of pens. So I'm going to select all of these cells, and now you can again see in the background it is already plotted. The data series for the sale of pens has been plotted. So now click on OK, and now we have got both our data series plotted. So you can see by default the chart data range has been updated by Excel. Now just look at this section where we are discussing about the horizontal or the category axis labels. So by default it has taken 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which you can see in the chart as well. It is taking 1 through 7, but we don't want it to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We want it to be the month names. So for that what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on edit. And now I'm going to select all of these cells under the month column because we want these values to be there in the horizontal axis. So now we can click on OK, and now you can see these values have been updated with January, February, March, April, May, June and July. And now you can simply click on OK. Okay, now anytime, let's say I also want to add the sale of notebooks. Okay, I want to add one more column to my data set that should be the sale of notebooks. So I can just add that here, and what we can do is we can just go to the chart design, and then if I just go to select data, there I can just add one more data series like we have added for pens and pencils. We can again add the same for our next column, which is going to be, let's say, the sale of notebooks, and then we can just click on OK, and our chart is going to be automatically updated. Now our chart is missing two important elements if you carefully see. One is the chart title and another is the informative box, which is the legend, okay, which is going to depict us that which data series is being depicted by which color. So what we can do is we can just select the chart, and here we get this plus icon which says the chart elements. So you can add or remove or change the chart elements using this icon. So I'm going to click on this, and here we get this option which says chart title. So just check this option. And again, here you get legend, check this option as well. So now if I see, I have got my chart title text box. So what I can do is I can simply edit this and add something like, let's say, sales. Okay, and this is your legend. If you want to change the positioning of your legend, what you can do is just click and drag the box, and in this way you can change the positioning of the legend in your chart area. Also, you can see that now blue depicts the sale of pencils, whereas orange depicts the sale of pens. So this was how you can create a clustered column chart from scratch. Now, once you have created a clustered column chart like this, it's very easy if you want to change this to a stacked column chart. So just select this chart, and we can just go to the insert tab, and there again in the column chart option, click on the drop down and then select the second kind of chart in the 2D column chart section, which is the stacked column chart. Okay, so here you have got the stacked column chart. So here the sale of pencils is stacked, or you can say the sale of pens is stacked over the sale of pencils. Now in this case, what happens is that you can actually get an estimate of the total sales over these months, over these periods. Okay, because if you want to compare the sale of pencils over these months, you can do that, since all of these blue columns, they start from the common base. But if you want to do that for the pens, it will be a bit difficult. Why so? Because now they are not starting from a common base. So this is one limitation of a stacked column chart. Whereas the advantage is that you can now get the net sales, the total sales for pens and pencils together. You can get this over the period of months, so you can get an estimate of the total sales for both of these included. Now let's look at the 100% stacked column chart. So again, I'm going to go to the column chart option, and here now I'm going to select this one, which is the 100% stacked column chart. Now you will see that the 100% line, all of these columns have now actually matched the 100% line. And in this case, and in this kind of chart, what it tells us is how much contribution has been made by each individual product in the net sales. Okay, so like you can see for the month of January, how much contribution to the total sale was actually made by pens versus pencils. So these kind of comparisons we can do, that how much contribution was made by each individual product for the total sales, but it does not give us any information about the true value. Okay, now let's look at the 3D charts. So you can convert any 2D chart to a 3D chart just by again go to this option, and here we get the options of 3D stacked or clustered column charts. Now these do not convey any additional information, they are just the representation of the 2D chart now in a 3D format. Okay, but this is generally avoided because it does not look very visually appealing, or it does not add a very professional touch, although you can always transform your 2D chart to a 3D chart. Now we are going to discuss of a similar kind of chart which is quite similar to the column chart, and that is a bar chart. So let's say again we come back to our cluster 2D column chart. Now if I want to convert this to a bar chart, I can get this from the same option here itself. So what we can do is, here you get the options for 2D bar charts, and here you get the option for 3D clustered or stacked bar charts. Now if you notice, bar charts are quite similar to the column charts. The only difference is that in case of column charts we had vertical bars, and now they are rotated by 90 degrees to get horizontal bars. Advantage that you can have in case of a bar chart is, like you can see that earlier that we had the horizontal axis, where we had the horizontal axis labels. Now they are present in a vertical fashion here. Okay, and this makes it much easier to read. So let's say instead of such short labels, if we have something longer, so let's say if we have longer horizontal labels, like you can see, if we have something like this, it becomes quite easy to read in a bar chart. Whereas if it would have been a column chart, like if I just again go to this chart and change the chart design to, let's say, a column chart, then it would have been much difficult to read. Okay, and sometimes even these labels overlap over one another. So this, you can say, is the advantage when we use bar charts, that it becomes much easier to read the labels that we have on this horizontal axis. So in this video we have learned about column charts and bar charts, and we have also seen how to create, first we have seen how to easily create column and bar charts just by a single click, but we have also seen how we can create the charts from scratch. So in the next videos we will be discussing about other kinds of charts. So let's meet you there. Thank you. So in this video we are going to discuss how we can format the charts and the different elements which are present in each and every chart. Now this method of formatting the chart elements is going to be universal, indifferent of any kind of chart we are going to discuss, be it a pie chart, bar chart, stacked column chart, line chart. So whatever chart it is, this method of formatting the chart elements is going to be universal. Okay, so how to format the chart elements? So what we can do is, we can just click on our chart, and let's say I want to format the horizontal axis right here. So what I can simply do is, I can double click on this horizontal axis and then it gets selected. Okay, and now what I can do is, if I want to apply some formatting options to this horizontal axis of my chart, I can just right click, we right click on that horizontal axis and we get this option which says format axis. Now once I click on this, you can see that we get a separate set of formatting options, and since we have selected the horizontal axis, it's going to give us the format axis options. Okay, but you can also select the other chart elements from here as well. Let's say I want to format the chart area, so what I can do is I can just simply click on this downward arrow and I can click on this option which says chart area, and now I get the options for the chart area formatting. So for the chart area, the formatting options that you mainly get are, the first option that we have here is fill and line. So here what you can do is you can actually change the fill or the border colors. Okay, and here you can actually add some shadows, some 3D effects, some glow, soft edges to your chart area. Also we have this option here with which you can actually change the size, which is the height, width, the rotation of your chart area. So either you can use these corner points to drag and increase or decrease the chart area, or what you can do is from here as well you can increase or decrease the chart height and width. Okay, now let's come to the first option, which is the fill and line. So in this section, we will see how we can add fill colors and borders to our chart. So in the first section, which is the fill, here what you can do is you can actually change the fill color. So by default, it's set to automatic. Let's say I don't want a fill to be applied, so I can just go to select no fill. In that case, the background is going to be transparent. So you can also see the cell grid lines at the back. If you want to fill it with a solid color, you can select the solid fill, and from here you can actually change whichever color you want your chart to be filled with. Okay, you can also change the transparency from here. If I want to apply a gradient fill, I can do that. So you can see that here we have a gradient applied. You can also change the gradient colors from here. You can also change the gradient type. So by default, a linear gradient is applied. Let's say I want to apply a radial gradient. You can do that as well. Now you can also apply a picture as the fill color. Either you can do what you can actually choose or insert a picture from that is already saved on your system, or by default this is this picture or texture which is applied. You can also apply a different texture by clicking on this option where you already get a bunch of different kind of texture options. Okay, you can also choose a pattern fill. Okay, but for now we will go with the automatic one, that is the default version. Then let's come to the border option. So by default again it's set to automatic. What we can do is, let's say I want to apply a solid line, so I'm going to select this option. You can change the color of the line you want. Let's say we want a dark green border to be applied. You can change the transparency of the border line. You can change the width. So let me add a very thick border so that it becomes visible. So let's go with something like this. Okay, you can change the dashing, like we might also want a dashed border or a dotted border, so you can give something like this. You can also say that if you want your border to have rounded corners, we can check this option. You can also add arrows. So these are some of the fill and border options that is available in this section. So normally when you are creating a business report or a professional report, all of these fancy options you might not use. You might just disregard all of these and just keep it to the very basic minimal options. So we can just stick to the automatic fill color, and if we are adding a border, then it can be just solid black color. That too, the dash can be just a plain border with no rounded edges, or you can just keep the rounded edges if you want. So these were the fill and the border options. Now we are again going to go to the drop down, and we have now already explored the chart area options. Let's see the other options available. So now let's look at the chart title formatting options. So what you can do is, again, you can add a fill color to this box, which is the chart title text box. So if you want, you can add some solid color to it. You can add a border to it, so you can add a solid line. Okay, again, all of the same options are available for this as well, but we are going to go with the default ones, that is automatic here. Now if you want to change the font style or the font size, you can just go select that text, okay, and go to the home menu here, and you can make the text bold from here. You can increase or decrease the text size if you want. You can also change the text color from here. Okay, you can also give a different font style. So all of these options are available for the chart title as well. Now let's look at the formatting options available for this horizontal axis. So I'm going to select the horizontal axis here, and we are going to select horizontal category axis from here. You can see it's selected. So again, the same options are available. That is, either you can give a fill color. Okay, you can also add a border to this particular box. We can change, or we can apply some 3D effects to this as well. Also, what you can do is, if you just select the text which is contained in the horizontal axis, then what you can do is, again, you can go to the home tab and you can again change the font style from here. Okay, you can change the font size as well from here. So all of these changes can be done. Also, just notice here, whenever we are selecting the horizontal axis, this additional fourth option actually gets enabled, and the options which are present in this, which is the axis options, are only meant for the horizontal axis formatting. Okay, so what all you can do from here is, like, let's say you want to make the horizontal and the vertical line start from a single point, you can do that. You want to change the spacing between the horizontal axis labels, so all of these changes can be done from these four options, but these are not used that much in business or professional scenarios. So we are going to now look at some other formatting options. Next, what we can do is, let's say we want to apply some formatting to the legend. So what we can do is, we can select this legend box right here. So like any other element, you can apply fill color, border. Okay, you can apply some 3D styling as well. You can change the style of the text from here in the home menu. Also, we have this option which is specifically meant for legends. So what you can do is, like, you can change the legend position. So if I want the legend to be at the top of my chart, I can select this. If I want it to be at the bottom, or maybe at the left, or maybe to the right, I can select all of these options. Also, let's say I want the legend to overlap with the chart, I can uncheck this option. So if I check this option, it tells me that show the legend without overlapping with the chart. So all of these options are available for formatting the legend. Next, we can also actually make changes to our plot area. So if we go to the chart options, and in this drop down, we can select plot area. So this is this highlighted box right here. So we can add fill colors, borders. Okay, again. Then also what we can do is, we can select the vertical axis, okay, which is this one right here on the left. So we have the same formatting options available. That is, we can apply fill colors, we can apply borders, but one very important option here is the fourth option right here. And in this, we have axis options, and there we have something called bound. And what it essentially means is, like, if you just notice the vertical axis right here, the minimum value is starting from 0, while the maximum value is going till 18,000, right? So what we can do is, we can actually change these values. Let's say I want the minimum value to, let's say, start from 1,000. I can just change this, and the maximum value, let's say I want this to be, let's say, 15,000. So I can change these values. So in this case, you can see there certain changes appear in the chart. Okay. Also, another important option here is under the number section right here. What you can see is, if I click on this, you will see that the category is set to general. Let's say I want these numbers. So by default, these are set to a general number format, but I, let's say, want to display it in terms of currency. So I can add the currency unit. Now I can also change the symbol. Like, by default, it's set to Indian rupees, but let's say I want to display this in term of dollar or any other currency, I can do it from here. Okay, so let's select this one. If we want, we can do it from here. So you can see the English dollar is applied. Now, since this is a numeric value, you can also actually change the number of decimal places you want to display after the decimal point. So by default, it's set to 2. I can also increase this to 3. So I'm just going to hit enter. Now you can see 3 values after the decimal point. So all of these different options are available here as well. So these were some of the formatting options that I wanted to discuss in this video. Let's meet you in the next one. Thank you. So the next formatting option that we are going to look at in this video is going to be the vertical axis major grid lines. So once I select this, you can see these horizontal grid lines, they get highlighted. So what you can do is, you can change the coloring of this line. Okay, so let's say we want this to be black. You can actually increase or decrease the width of these grid lines. You can change the type, like you can also go for a dashed line. You can also turn these into arrows. So all of these different options are available with the horizontal grid lines as well. In case you want these lines to become a bit more visible, you can apply these formatting options to them. Next, what we have is the series formatting option. So first we are going to look at the series for pencils. So for these data series, what you can do is you can change the coloring of the columns which refer to this data series. So for example, we want it to be a different fill color. What you can do is, so by default for pencils, it's set to blue. We can change this to, let's say, green. So you can see now the data series for pencils has the color changed to green. What you can do is you can also add a border to these columns. So we can like add a solid a line. So just to make this a bit more visible so that you understand what I'm doing, I'm changing the color to orange and I'm going to increase the width. So you can see a border is being applied to these columns. Okay, you can also add a dashed type. Other than that, you can also apply some shadows, glows to apply some 3D effects. So now let's look at the third option that we have right here, which is specifically meant for the series. So here we have the series option. So on which axis this data series is plotted. Okay, so I've already told you that by default, this one on the left, it's our primary axis. So we are plotting the data based on this. So if you change this to secondary axis, it is going to look a bit different. What is happening here, you can see a bit of orange right here, and that is because it is basically overlapping. So the value for the pens has basically overlapped on that of the pencils. Okay, so you can consider that this is behind this blue column. The orange column is behind that blue column. Okay, so we are again going to go back to the primary axis because that is the default and the perfect way in which we want our chart to look. Now the next option available here is series overlap. So what it does is, if you increase this, what happens is the adjacent series is going to overlap on the current series. Okay, so basically the data series, the column for pen is going to overlap on that of pencil. Okay, so you can see that slowly as I'm increasing the series overlap percentage, the orange column is actually coming on top, or it is overlapping that of the blue one. Okay, so I'm again going to set it back to 0. And what happens if I actually change this to 100%? So it's going to become a stacked column chart, right? Because it's 100%, it's overlapping on the other data series. So I'm just going to set it back to 0, hit enter. Okay, so this is the by default version. You can also increase or decrease the gap width. Then what happens, it actually increases or decreases the width of the individual column for that particular series. So if you want to overlap, if you want to decrease the spacing between the current data series plot and the adjacent data series plot, then you are going to increase this value, which is the series overlap. But if you want to increase or decrease the adjacent data points for the same data series, okay, in other words, if you want to increase the column width for that particular, like if I want to increase all the column width for the blue data series, I can just increase or decrease this gap width. Okay, so these were the element formatting options. And again, I have already told you that you can again add or remove chart elements. Like if I just highlight this chart, we have this option which says plus, with which you can add or remove any chart elements. So for now, let's say we don't have the axis titles in our chart. Let's say I want those to be shown. So I'm just going to check this option, and here we get the axis title. So again, like we have seen for any other chart element, we can again apply the formatting options to this axis title as well. We can change the text, we can change the font style. So these were all the chart element formatting options that I wanted to discuss. So let's meet you in the next video. Thank you. Hello everyone and welcome to this video. So in this video, we are going to be discussing about the next kind of chart, that is the line chart. So line charts are mainly used for representing the trends over a time period. Like in this example that you can see on the screen, here we have a data set where we are actually comparing the contribution of pencils, pens and notebooks to the total sales over a time period of 1 year. So you can see in the data set right here, we have the data for all the months starting from January to December of a particular year. And then in percentages, we are representing how much contribution each of these items, that is pencils, pens and notebooks, have made to the total sale. Okay. So for this particular data here, we have this line chart. As you can see that we can very easily understand the trends of the contribution of each of these items over the time period of 1 year. Like from the legend, you can see here that the blue line depicts the contribution of that of pencil, orange one depicts that of pens, whereas the gray one depicts that of notebooks. Okay. So as you can see from this chart, the contribution of pencils to the total sale was the highest initially, but now it has decreased over the months. Similarly, for pens, it has increased over the months, right? And for notebooks, it has remained somewhat same, and also it is very less. The contribution of notebooks to the overall sale has been very less, and that's why that line remains very close to the bottommost horizontal line. Okay, so first we will see that how we can create these charts. I'm just going to delete this chart. So I'm just going to select the data set right here, and we are going to go to the insert tab in the ribbon. And since we already know that Excel very cleverly identifies that which should be the horizontal axis and what should be plotted on the vertical axis, we can either just use the line chart option manually, or we can go to the recommended charts option, and Excel is going to recommend us a line chart right here. You can also see the preview here. So we can click on OK, and now you can see that we have got our line chart here. Okay, now we can make all the customizations that we want. So firstly, you can see that the months have been plotted on the horizontal axis, whereas on the vertical primary axis, we have got the percentage values. Now what we can do is, first we can edit the chart title if we want. So let's say we write something like sales contribution. Okay, now here we already have the legend. If we want to add some other items, we can just click on this plus icon, and here you can see you can add the axis titles if you want, or you can add the data labels. Okay, so data label is basically going to highlight each and every data point. Since we have numerous data points in this chart, if we add the data labels, this chart is going to look very clustered, so we are not going to use this. So you can also add or remove the grid lines. Like you can see now I've unchecked the grid line option, so the horizontal grid lines have disappeared. I'm going to turn it on. We already have the legend turned on. Okay, so other than that, what we can do is we can also make changes, or we can also apply formatting to the chart. These options we have already seen in the previous videos. Like we can change the chart design. So for now it's selected this default one, but if we want to like let's say we want to highlight each and every data point, we might want to select this one. But as you can see that since we are having so many data points, now highlighting each one of them is going to make our chart look very cluttered. You might also want something like this. So here you can actually decide what kind of line chart design you might want. You can also format each of the chart elements that we have already seen in the previous video. I'm not going to repeat all of those again here. What we are going to do is we can also change the chart type. Okay, so let's click on this option which says change chart type, and now we will actually look at the different versions of the line chart that we have. Okay, so this was our simple line chart. We can also have a stacked line chart. Like we had stacked column chart, we can also have a stacked line chart. So let's click on this option and let's click on OK. So now you can see that this is how our line chart looks. So what has happened is here at the bottom, the blue line represents the contribution of pencils. Then we have the contribution of pens and the contribution of notebooks here. So what essentially is happening here is that the notebook line is always at 100% because it is representing the overall percentage, including the contribution of pens plus pencils plus notebooks. And that's why that line is always going to be at the 100% because it represents the overall contribution of the total contribution. Now the orange line, which is basically the contribution of pens, it is nothing but the summation, or it is basically the total contribution made by pencils and pens. And why it is appearing in this fashion? It is because here you know that it's a stacked line chart, and that's why the lines are stacked over one another. Okay. So this is what is a stacked line chart. Now you can also change to a 100% stacked line chart. Now in this case we are not going to get any different result. Why so? Because we have already been calculating the numbers in percentages. If the numbers here would have been not in percentages, then that number would have been converted to a percentage, and then we would have gotten this 100% stack line chart. But here we are already presenting the data in form of percentage, so not much difference is made. Then we also have line with markers. So if I select this option, what happens essentially is, again, the data points are actually going to be highlighted. Okay. So if you want to highlight each and every data point, you might just select this kind of line chart. And now if I hover my mouse on any of the data points, you will actually get the value. Okay, like this one tells me that this is for the data series of pens. Okay, the orange one is for pens, and then it's for the point June, and the value is 63.7%. So which essentially means what? That in the month of June, the contribution made by pens was actually 63.7% to the total sales. Okay. So in this way, you can also use line charts with data points or markers. Here we have stacked line chart with markers. We might also use this one. So this is nothing but the stacked line chart just with the markers for all the data points. Next, what we have here is 100% stacked line with markers. This is also going to give us the same result since we already have the values here in percentages. And lastly, we are going to discuss about the 3D line chart. Now 3D line chart looks something like this. Okay, so if I just change this back to our default chart style, so this is how a 3D line chart looks. Now just notice that 3D line chart does not give us any additional information other than what is already being conveyed by a normal line chart. And normally we tend to avoid 3D line charts because it looks unprofessional, as well as it does not add any additional value. Now I'm going to show you the effect of a 3D line chart here by this data set. So I have actually taken a different data set where for these 3 months we are seeing the trends of the strength of these 3 classes. Okay, so we have 3 classes, class A, class B and class C, and over these 3 months we are actually checking the strength of these classes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this data set, and I just can click on insert and then go to recommended charts, and here we are first going to select a line chart. So this is how your normal line chart is going to look. You can add the chart title as, let's say, class strength. Okay, so this is going to be our chart title, and what I'm going to do is, let's say we want to see how a 3D chart is going to look for this data set. So I'm going to select this chart right here, go to change chart type, and here we are going to select the last option, which is the 3D line chart. So click on OK. So you can see this is how our 3D line chart is going to look for this data set. So you must understand from this that it's really becoming difficult to understand what is the trend of the class strength for each of these classes. Like if I change this back to a normal line chart, it becomes easier for us to understand that the class strength for class A has increased over these 3 months. For class B has also increased, whereas the initial class strength for B was lesser than that of A, but the class strength for class C has decreased over the time period. So this becomes much more understandable and visually appealing as well, rather than the 3D line chart. So these were all the line chart formatting options and topics about line chart that I wanted to discuss. So let's meet you in the next video. Thank you. Hello everyone and welcome to this video. So in this video, we will be discussing about the next kind of charts, which are area charts. Okay. So here you can see that I've got a data set where we are actually seeing the number of units of pencils, pens and notebooks that were sold over these 4 months. Okay. For a particular year. Okay. So here what we have is basically an area chart. And this basically is the representation of the sales for pencils only. Okay, first we are going to understand for one item, and then we are going to see how to include the other two items. Okay, now if you just notice carefully here, area chart is nothing but if you just fill color to the line chart. So this is your line chart for pencils, and you can see that if I just fill color to the line chart, if I just draw the vertical lines from these 2 points. So let me tell you, like if I just would have joined these vertical lines like this, and if we would have just filled color to this portion, then this would have turned into the area chart, right? Okay, so now you can see that we are just plotting the values for pencils, but we also now want to plot the values for pens and notebooks. So what we can do is we can just select this chart right here. Then here we have this option which says chart design, and we are going to select this option which is select data. And for now you can see that in the legend entries only pencils are entered, but what we are going to do is we are going to add the other two items as well. So we already know this. We are going to click on add. Then first you need to give the series name. So in that case we will select this cell right here which contains pens. Okay, and then for the series values we need to provide all those cells in which we have the values for pens. So we have selected all of these cells. Now you click on OK. Okay, so you can see that we have got one more area chart, or one more data series plotted on this chart itself. We are going to add the same for notebooks as well. So again go to add, then the series name is going to be this cell right here which contains notebooks, and the series values is going to be what? It's going to be all of these cells. So the series values is going to be all of these cells in which we have the values for notebooks, and now you click on OK. And we are not going to make any change to the horizontal category axis because it's plotted perfectly. So just click on OK, and now you have got your area chart. So if I just would have changed the line chart as well, we can quickly do that. So just go to select data, then in the similar fashion just add the data series once for pen, and then we need to select the cells for pen, click on OK, and then again add for notebooks, and then again the cells which contains the values for notebooks, then click on OK, and here you have got the line chart for this particular data set. Okay, so for now we are not going to look at the line chart. Okay, this was just to give you an idea that how area charts actually work. This is nothing but if you just fill the area beneath your line graph. Okay, so I'm just going to delete it for now. Now, in case you want to learn from where we can create this area chart, so I'm going to delete this as well, and we will be creating our area chart from scratch. So what I'm going to do is just select the data set right here, then go to insert, and then either you can go to recommended charts, or what we can do is in the line chart option, you get to insert your area chart as well. So you can see insert line or area chart, click on the arrow, and here you get the options for 2D area and 3D area. So first we are going to start with 2D area chart. So click on this, and now you can see that you have got your 2D area chart. Okay, now if you see that we can only see a very little portion of the blue area graph which represents the sale of pencils. And why so? Because it is basically behind this orange part which represents the sale for pens. So what we can do is we can basically reduce the transparency of the orange part of the area graph so that the blue part becomes more visible. So how to do that? We have already seen how we can actually edit and format each and every element of your chart. So what we can do is we can just select this portion of the orange part, and we can also decrease the transparency. For that, what I need to do is go to the series options, and there I need to select the orange series, which is for the series pens, data series pens. So I've got this selected, and now what I can just do is, so what we are doing is first we are going to select the fill to be a solid fill, and then what we can do is again, let's say I select that orange color that we had previously, and now you can actually change the transparency. So if I just make it more transparent, now you can see that the blue part of the area graph now becomes more visible. right? So in this way, what we can do is we can also change the transparency for the gray part of the area graph, which is the one for notebooks. So in that case, just make sure that the series notebooks is selected, and then again I can just go to the coloring options, the fill options, and go to solid fill, and then we can just change the color so that we can differentiate between the data series for pens and that for notebooks. So I'm going to select the grayish color here. Okay, and again you can just increase or decrease the transparency, so, or I can just choose a different color like this, and I can just make it more transparent. So now you can see that it becomes a bit more distinguishable. The series, the data series for pencils, it becomes much more distinguishable. Now also you can add the other chart elements. We have already covered all of those. Like you can just click on this plus icon which says chart elements, and then you can add the axis titles, data labels. So whatever you want to add to your Excel chart, you can do it from here. Now one solution to this problem is basically the usage of stacked area chart. So what we can do is we can again select this data set, go to insert, and then in the same option where we got the 2D area chart, we also get the 2D stacked area chart. So we can just select this, and then what happens, as we already know that in case of stacked charts, the data series is stacked, the plot of each data series is stacked on one above the other. So in this case, since the data series plots are stacked on one above the other, like for the first month, which is January, we know that the sale of pencils was 5,000. Okay, so this data point perfectly reaches the 5,000 mark. Now for the same month, the sale for pens was 6,500, and that value or that quantity or magnitude is basically stacked on top of this. Okay, so starting from 5,000, it's actually putting up the magnitude for 6,500, and then on top of this the magnitude for the month of January for notebooks, that is 1,200, is stacked on top of it. So in this way the data series plots are stacked on one on top of the other in case of a stacked 2D area plot. Next, we again have the 100% stacked area plot. So like any other chart we have seen, what we can do is we can again just select this data set and go to insert, and then go to your area charts, and here you get the 100% stacked area chart. So this basically, we already know that this represents the magnitude in terms of percentages, the entire or the total percentage being 100%. So you can see that this is similar to a stacked area chart where the magnitude is stacked on one on top of the other for each particular data series, but here the magnitude is represented in percentages. So obviously the entire or the topmost line, which is the data series for notebooks, it is basically always touching the 100% line. Okay, so from this kind of chart, what we can analyze is the individual contribution to each of these items to the total sale. Okay, so next what we have is a 3D area chart. So what we can do is, again I'm just going to select this data set right here, and let's have a quick look at the 3D area charts as well. So just go to insert, and here we have our 3D area chart. So this is the first option where you can see that each data series plot is actually like an individual wall, and again you can see that the plot for the notebooks has been hidden by these two walls in the front. Then we also have the 3D stacked area chart and the 3D 100% stacked area charts. So you must have already figured out by now that this kind of chart is not very visually appealing, and it's not very professional as well. So we are going to avoid the usage of these kind of 3D charts. So for now, this was all about area charts that I wanted to discuss in this video. Let's meet you in the next one. Thank you, everyone, and welcome to this video. So in this video, we will be discussing about the next kind of chart, which is the pie chart. Now, a pie chart is very useful when we want to represent the relative proportion or contribution made by each of these data points to the whole. Now a pie chart normally has, or we can plot normally few data points in a pie chart. If there are a huge number of data points, then the pie chart is going to look very distorted and cluttered, and then it's not going to be very efficient way of plotting those data points with a pie chart. So here we are having a simple example where you can see that here we have items, and in items we have 4 items: pens, pencils, notebooks and others. Okay, and here we are actually seeing the units sold per item. Okay, so number of total units sold for these all items have been plotted. So you can see that here we have the legend in our pie chart, which basically tells me that which colored slice represents which particular item. Okay, for example, for the blue slice, it's basically it represents, this slice represents the magnitude of the unit sold for the item pen. Whereas for orange part, it shows that for pencils, gray one is for notebooks, whereas the yellowish part is for the others. Okay, so you can see from this chart that the maximum area of this pie chart is occupied by the orange slice, which tells me that the maximum proportion of sales has been done by the pencils, or maximum proportion of sales were due to the pencils, okay, out of the total sales. Now, it might be difficult for us to understand what is the actual value in this case, because here no data points are plotted. Now, we already know how we can add those chart elements by clicking on this icon right here, and we can just add the data labels, legends, each and everything. So, but before that, we will see how we can create this pie chart. So I will just delete the chart that we have right here, and then I will select my data set, go to insert, and either you can click on the recommended charts option and Excel is going to recommend you pie chart itself, or if you don't find the option right here, you can select this option, which is for inserting a pie chart or a donut chart. Okay, so we can just select this option and it's going to give us the 2D pie chart. Okay, so now we have got our 2D pie chart, and you can see that we have got the chart title, we have got the legend. Now let's say I want the data label. So what I can do is just click on this plus icon, and I'm going to select this option which says data labels. So now you can see that the magnitude or the numerical value is written over each of these slices of this pie chart. Now by default it's written in the center of these slices. I can also change that. So if I just hover on this option which is data labels, you can see we get this arrow right here. If I click on this, I get the other options for formatting the data label. So by default it's set to best fit. I can select outside end as well, data call out, best fit, or center. So I will just, let's say, go with outside end. Okay, also you can get some more options. If I click here, you will see that I get the other options related to these data labels. What you can do is, if you want to apply a solid line outside each of these data label text boxes, we can do that. So by default you can see that this grayish, light grayish line is applied. Let's say I don't want to apply any line, I will select the no line option. Other than that, what you can do is you have the fill option as well. So by default the solid fill, which is white, has been set. I can also select no fill, or you can also select a gradient fill. So you can see that a gradient is applied inside each of these data label text boxes. So I'm just going to stick to no fill. You can also apply the 3D effects like a shadow, a glow, soft edges to make these data label text boxes appear 3D. If I just select any particular data label text box, you can see that we can also actually adjust the height and width of the size of the text box right here. We can also actually change the alignment. So for now it's set to middle centered. We can also make it top centered. We can make this bottom. So if I just increase the size of this box, this will make more sense. So let me just increase the size of this box, and now if I just change the alignment to, let's say, bottom centered, so you can see that now the text inside this data label text box is aligned to the bottom center position, or we can make it middle as well. So by default we are going to go with middle, and I'm just going to again reduce the size of this data label text box. So either you can adjust from here, or we can simply drag and click. You can also adjust or change the positioning of your data label text box by just clicking and dragging inside the plot area. Again, in the fourth option, you also get some other label options. Like for now, you can see that we are getting the values in percentages. And why so? Because here you can see in this drop down under the label options title, you can see the label is going to contain the category name and the value in percentage. If I just uncheck this, you can see that we are just getting the category name. Like since this particular label box is selected, the changes are being applied here. But if I just uncheck this and I select each and every one of the label boxes, what we can do is, again, we can go to the fourth option right here. Under label options, we can change whether we want the percentage values to appear or not, or whether we actually want the actual value as well. So now what happens? The category name, the actual value, and the percentage value as well, they are all comma separated and visible in the label boxes. So the label position you can change from here as well. Also, you can see that you can actually select the separator. So we can select semicolon as well. Then each of these label options are going to be separated by a semicolon. We can change this back to comma as well. So each of these elements in the label is going to be now comma separated. Also, what we can do is, let's say I want to draw attention to this particular slice, that is the yellow slice. Okay, the contribution of other items to the total sale. What I can do is I can just click this particular slice and I can just click and drag this outside. So this is called exploding of a pie chart. What it does is it draws attention especially to this particular slice. Okay, so we can undo this action as well. Do a Control Z. Now what we are going to do is we are going to look at the different options available, or the different types of pie charts available. So we can go to change chart type here. And then we can select pie from here, and then we can actually see the different kind of pie charts that are available. So by default, we have stuck to this one, which is the 2D pie chart. We have a 3D pie chart as well. So if I just click on OK, you will see that we actually get a 3D pie chart. Now in this case, what you can do is you can actually format this 3D pie chart as well. Like here, you can actually change or increase or decrease the rotations. Like you can increase or decrease the X rotation, the Y rotation. Okay, and then you can change the perspective angle as well. So all of these are the ways in which you can actually make changes to your 3D pie chart. So we have already discussed about the 2D pie chart. Then we have discussed about the 3D pie chart. Okay, now we are going to discuss about the other kind of 2D pie charts, which is pie of pie and bar of pi. Okay, so what happens in case of pie of pi? In case we want to emphasize on a particular slice of the main pie chart and we want to split that slice into a separate pie chart, in that case we use this pie of pi. So this will make more sense. Let's just look at this data set that I have right here. So here we are having the normal items, which are the pens, pencils, notebooks. But now the others category has been now subdivided into 4 sub items. So in the others category, we are now also visualizing the units sold in case of erasers, sharpeners, highlighters and clips. And all of these 4 products, they come under the same banner, that is of the others category. So in such cases, what we might want is that we might want there to be a main pie chart, and the others slice should be exploded or should be actually represented in a separate pie chart. So this is basically a pie of pie chart, but I will show you how we can create this. So I'm going to delete this chart right here. And then again, I'm going to select my data set. And now you will see that if I go to the recommended charts option, I'm not going to get that kind of a pie chart recommended. So what we are going to do is we are going to go to this option which says insert pie or donut chart. Click on the downward arrow. And here we are going to select this option which says pie of pie chart. Now what has happened, you will see that in the main pie chart, we have the slices of pens, pencils, notebooks and others, and the others of erasers plotted. And in this particular slice, it has expanded to a separate pie chart. Okay, but here we want to make some correction, because in the separate pie chart you can see we are just getting 3 slices, but here we want to represent all the items that come under the others category, which means essentially these last 4 items: eraser, sharpeners, highlighters and clips. So how to make changes to this? What we can do is we can just right click here on this new or the separate pie chart, and here we have this option which says format data series. So I'm going to click on that, and here we get this option for formatting the data series, and now you can see that we are splitting by position 3. So it's going to take the last 3 values in our list and it's going to separate them into the new pie chart, but we want to include the last 4 values of our data set. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase this value from 3 to 4, and now you can see that we are now having 4 slices in our new pie chart. So now you can see that erasers, sharpeners, highlighters and clips, all of these 4 items that comes under the others category are now plotted in this new pie chart. Okay, and they have all been formed from this brown slice, which is basically this particular slice which was the representation of all the other items. Okay, they have now been expanded and they are now portrayed or visualized in this separate new pie chart. So this is what is a pie of pie chart. There is also a different way in which you can split your pie chart. So here we were actually splitting on the basis of position. Let's say I want to split on the basis of value. What it means is, now let's say I say that any value which is less than 500, I'm going to split those, and those are going to be occupied in the secondary pie chart. So if I hit enter, I'm going to get the same value. And why so? Because I can see that the units sold for these 4 items that come under the other category, they fall under 500, whereas all the other 3 units, all the other 3 items, the units sold are greater than 500. So in this way you can actually calculate that what value we are going to put it as the upper limit, and below those all the items that have values less than that particular value are going to be portrayed into the secondary pie chart. You can also split the series on the basis of percentage values. In that case, you can give a custom percentage value, or we can also split the series by some custom criteria. In case we want to split the series by some custom criteria, what happens that in this case we actually need to select a particular slice, like I'm selecting this orange one right here, and then I can actually decide that whether this slice I want it to belong to the first pie chart or the first plot or the second plot. So if I just click second plot, you can see now that orange slice has been transferred to the second pie chart. So similar to the pie of pie chart, we also have bar of pie charts. So what we can do is we can just select this chart, and if I just go to change data type, here you get this option which says bar of pie. So I'm going to click on OK, and what it does is, just like the previous one, here we have the main pie chart, and one slice is going to be now expanded and it is going to be represented in the form of a bar chart. So it basically is like a stack of bar chart, right? So it's like a stacked bar chart, and here the height of each of these colored bar is basically representation of the magnitude. Now we can again make changes, or we can make additions of elements to this particular chart. We can add the data labels, okay, and then you can decide whether you want it to be at the center or data call out. So let's put it outside end. Again, what we can do is we can select the data label text boxes, and then we can make changes here. Like if we go to label options, we can select whether we want the actual value to be represented or whether we want it to be in percentage. Okay, then you can have the category name as well. You can also increase or decrease the sizes of these data labels. So the last thing that we are going to discuss in this video is a donut chart. So this is what is a donut chart. Now what is the difference between a donut chart and a pie chart is, first is you can see this white space or the hole in the middle. And the most important difference is that with donut charts, you can now plot for multiple data series. Like in pie charts, we could plot only for a single data series. In case of donut charts, we can actually compare the contributions made by the individual items in two separate or multiple separate data series. Like here you can see that in this data set, we are again having those same items, but now we are comparing the contribution made by each of them to the total sales, first in the year 2021 and then in a separate data series for the year 2022. So if I just select the donut chart, you can see that the inner circle here is basically representation of the contribution made in the year 2021, whereas the outer circle in the donut chart is basically that for 2022. Okay. Now let's see, like from this donut chart, what is easily understandable is, like, you can say that the blue part is for pens, and you can see that the sale of pens or the contribution of pens to the total sale has increased in 2022 from 2021. But for the others, we cannot easily say this because the baseline has moved, so sometimes it becomes really difficult to compare such trends or such contributions with the help of donut charts, although this might be visually appealing. Now in that case, what we can do is we can add the data labels that is going to add some more numeric meaning to the chart. But before that, we are going to see how we can draw a donut chart. So I'm just going to delete this here. And what we are going to do is we are going to select the data set that we have right here, then go to insert. And what we can do is we can just select this option which says insert pie or donut chart. Click on the downward arrow, and here we get the option for inserting a donut chart. And now we have got our donut chart inserted. So what we can do is, like any other chart, first we can do the basic formatting. So we can change the chart title. So what I'm going to do is, let's say units sold. Okay. And here in the legend, you can see that we get the idea that which colored section or slice is for the contribution of which particular item. We can increase or decrease the size of this legend box, just that it becomes more legible since we are now having multiple items. We can also click and drag to change the positioning of the legend box in the plot area. So what we can do is we can add other formatting options, like if I just go to this option right here, what we can do is we can actually select individual ring. Like if I just select the inner ring, and if you go to this particular option right here, you can actually increase or decrease the donut hole size. So if I'm just decreasing the donut hole size, the ring width is going to increase. You can also change the angle of the first slice. Then we can select the outer slice as well. And in that way, again, you can like increase or decrease the donut hole size. So if you want, you can add data labels as well. I can just select the data labels. Then you can also change the data label options. Like if I just select the data label right here, and then we can like decide whether we want the value to be shown as numeric value or in percentage. Okay. Now, since we are having multiple items to be plotted in a single donut chart, definitely this is going to look much cluttered. So normally the better way to represent such kind of data is using stacked column charts. But still, I have shown you how to create a donut chart so that you know. So this was all for this video. Let's meet you in the next one. Thank you. Hello everyone and welcome to this video. So in this video, we are going to discuss about the next kind of chart, which are known as scatter charts. These are also called XY charts, and we will also discuss about bubble charts. So what is a scatter chart? It is a pretty common kind of a chart. The only difference that you will find in this kind of a chart from the other ones that we have discussed till now, here is both the axis, the X and Y axis, if we consider them, both of them, they have some values. Like previously, the horizontal axis was basically a category axis. But in this case, both the X and the Y axis represent a value. Okay. Now, these kind of scatter charts are basically used to represent the linear relationship between two variables. So let's come to this example. What we are essentially doing is, for this year 2023, and over the period of 12 months, what we are seeing, first we are seeing that how much spend was done for marketing by a particular, we can say, let's say a food joint. Okay. So food joint, we are seeing that what was the marketing spend per month. And based on that marketing spend, now we are seeing that what were the sales over these 12 months. So this is the data that we have plotted using this scatter chart. So as you can see that the title of this chart is sales. So what we're trying to analyze is that what has been the relationship between the marketing spend by that food joint versus the number of sales that were conducted per month. Now, if you carefully notice here in the horizontal axis, it's no longer a category axis, but it actually contains the value. Okay, so this is our horizontal value axis. So if I hover my mouse, you can see the name comes up, whereas this is our vertical value axis. And here what we are doing is, with the help of these dots or this scatter plot, we are actually getting the relationship. We are trying to define the relationship between these two x and y variables. Okay, so let's first see how we can create the scatter plot. So I'm going to delete the plot that we have right here. And then, since we will be considering these two values, and I've already told you that a scatter plot is plotted with the help of an x value and y value. So we will be considering these two values right here. So I'm going to select these two columns only, then go to insert. And then in the recommended charts option, either you can find the scatter plot right here, or we have the option for inserting a scatter plot from here as well. And if you click on this, you can select the first one, which is a normal simple scatter chart. So I can just select this, and now you have got your scatter chart. Okay. So you can see that we have the horizontal grid lines, and based on that and the positioning of these data points, we can actually say that what is the magnitude of this point. Like from here we can notice that the first point is basically the x value is 1000 and the y value is 100. Okay, now just to make more sense, we can also actually add the name of these axes. So for that, what we can do is, we know how to add and remove chart elements. We are going to click on this plus icon, and here we are going to select this option which says axis titles. Okay, and what we can do is, you can see that on the y axis we are actually depicting the sales starting from 0 till 100. Okay, so what we are going to do is, we can just change the text here and we can just write sales per month. Okay, and here what we can write is marketing spend per month. So from here we can see that the first point that we have right here, that is the first data point, which is essentially this one. Here the x value or the marketing spend is 1000, and for that the corresponding sales is 100. Now if we just, let's say, take any other random data point, let's say I take this one. So what I'm going to see is, the value is somewhat less than 4000 for the x axis, and for the y axis it's somewhat less than 500. If I just want to get the exact value, what I can do is, I can again go to the chart elements and I can check this option which says data labels, and then I can see that yes, the value for this data point is 480, which essentially means what? It should be here. So the data point corresponds to this particular month, that is, it's for September. Okay. Also, we can count like January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August and September. So we can count as well. Then we get to know that this particular data point is representation of the sales for the month of September. Okay. Now let's say, in order to better portray the relationship between the x and the y variable, what we can do is, we can now see that the y-axis or the vertical axis value is starting from 0. But we know that we don't have any value below 100. So what we can do is, we can just select this vertical axis, and here in the axis option, what we can do is, we can set the bound, and the minimum bound, instead of being 0, we can start from a different number. Since we know that we don't have any value for the y-axis which is less than 100, I'm just going to set the minimum bound for the y-axis to be, let's say, 75. So in this case, what happens, you can see that the positioning of the data points have shifted down a little bit based on the positioning or based on the values of our vertical axis. So now let's look at the different categories or different types of scatter plot. So I'm going to select this chart right here, and then we can go to chart design, and here you get this option which says change chart type. I'm going to click on that. So you can see that for now we have been using the first option or the first type of the scatter plot, which is a simple scatter plot. Next, we have a scatter plot with smooth lines and markers. So if I select this, what it essentially does is it actually connects all the data points that we have in our scatter chart with the help of smooth lines. So if you notice carefully that these lines are not connected using a straight line. These are connected using smooth or curved line. So starting from the first data point in your scatter chart till the very last point, all of these points will be connected with the help of these smooth lines. Now it actually helps you to see the trends, that how the values are changing over time. So this kind of a scatter plot has both data points, like you can see these dots right here, as well as the smooth lines connecting these data points. Now let's look at the other kind of scatter plots. So again, I'm going to go to change chart type. And the third one is basically scatter plot with smooth lines but without the data points. So here you can see you no longer are able to view those dots or the data points, but you can just see the smooth line connecting those points. Okay. Next, we have a scatter chart with straight lines and markers. So here in this case, instead of the smooth lines or the curved lines, here you can see the data points are connected with straight lines. Okay, so that is only the difference here. Then again, we have scatter plot with straight lines but without the markers or the data points. So here you can see we again get the straight lines but no data points are highlighted. So now I'm going to change this back to our normal simple scatter plot. So now we actually get an additional feature or an additional element with a scatter plot, and that is a trend line. So if I just click on this plus icon, we can see this option of a trend line. So if I just select this, you can see we get a dotted line which is marked through the plot. So I've already discussed that scatter plots are mainly used to establish the trend or the linear relationship between two variables. So trend line basically helps us to establish that, and the line is such that it tries to minimize the distance between each of these data points and their corresponding value on the trend line. Okay. So overall, the trend line for this scatter plot suggests me that there is a positive relationship between the marketing spend and the sales. Okay. So basically, if you try to calculate the difference between any 2 points on the trend line corresponding to the x-axis, and for those same points corresponding to the y-axis, you are going to get the slope of this trend line. Okay, and the slope of this trend line is going to give you the actual relationship that for how much increased marketing spend, what is going to be the increased sales for that particular month. So all of these kind of trend calculations you can do with the help of the trend line. Now also there are different kinds of trend lines. Okay, so if I just select the trend line here, you get the trend line options right here, and what we can do is we can actually select different kind of trend lines. If I go to the third option right here, so by default the linear trend line option is selected. We also have an exponential trend line, we have a logarithmic trend line, we have polynomial trend line, we have the power trend line, and we also have a moving average trend line. So based on your data set, you can actually try out all of the trend lines and then check which particular trend line fits your data the best. So with the help of trend line, you can also forecast, like for example, if you already know that what is the marketing spend that you are going to do for the next month. So based on that value, you can try to predict what can be your per month sales based on the trends that you have seen in this scatter chart. Now, since this is a line, you can also actually get the equation for this trend line. So here, if you just scroll down, you get this option which says display equation on chart. So by default, it's going to be unchecked. But if I just check this option, you can see we actually get the equation of this line. So I'm just going to put this here. So what you can see is this is the equation, that is y is equals to 0.1273x minus 41.46. Okay. So let's say that you know that the x value, which is going to be basically the marketing spend per month, is 1000. So what you can essentially do is you can put the value of 1000 in the place of x, and then if you calculate this equation, you're going to get the value of y, which is nothing but the sales that you have conducted per month. So these were the topics about the scatter chart which I wanted to discuss. Now here we have already seen all of these kind of scatter plots, but the last two options remain, and these are nothing but bubble chart. So this is a 2D bubble chart and this is a 3D bubble chart. Now we have discussed that when we want to depict the relationship between two variables, we use the scatter plots here, okay? But when we have three variables and we want to depict or we want to plot the relationship between those three variables, in those cases we will be using a bubble chart. So let's look at the bubble chart. Here we are going to discuss about bubble chart. So bubble charts, as I've already told you, they are used to represent the relationship between three variables. So let's say here we have a data set where we have 7 students, and first we are plotting what are the total number of mistakes made by each one of them. Then we have the number of hours of coaching that was provided to each of these 7 students, and based on that we are getting that how many mistakes have been reduced for each student. Okay, so what we are trying to do is we are trying to get the relationship between these two on this third variable. Okay, so we are trying to get the relationship between the total mistakes and the hour of coaching on this third variable. Okay, so as you can see here, we have got the bubble chart. So what it essentially means is the values that are plotted on the horizontal axis are basically the x-axis, which is basically the total mistakes. Okay, and then the values plotted on the y-axis is basically representation of the hours of coaching. And the radius of each of this bubble or each of this circle is the third value or the reduced mistakes magnitude. And the essence of a bubble chart is to understand that if we can see that most number of bubbles, they appear in a certain area or in a certain portion of the chart, then we can say that the maximum relationship can be devised in that area of the chart. Okay. Now what we can infer from this bubble chart is that bubble chart tells us that if maximum of the same area circles are present in a particular position of the bubble plot, then we can say that the maximum reduction in the mistakes happened for that value. So what we can see that in this bubble chart plot, if I just say that this is the region, so this is the portion where maximum of the big circles fall in the bubble chart plot area. So in that case, what we can say is that the students whose mistakes lied between 40 to 60, okay, for them the maximum reduction has happened. And from here we can also infer that you should be taking at least 3 hours of coaching, because from here we can see the minimum value for this portion is 3 or more. So from here we can infer that you must be taking at least 3 or more hours of coaching, and then only there will be the maximum reduction in the number of mistakes you have made. Okay, so this was everything that we can infer from the bubble chart. It helps us to estimate or analyze the relationship between three variables. So now let's see how we can draw the bubble chart. What we need to do is, since we will be plotting the bubble chart on the basis of these three values or the values of these three variables. So first select these three columns, go to insert, and here under the scatter chart you get the option for the 2D bubble chart. So first you need to select this. Now by default, Excel does what? By default, it's going to select the first column value for the radius. But we don't want that. We want the first column to be the x-axis values, the next one to be y-axis values, and then the third one, which is the reduced mistake column, should be the radius of our circles or bubbles. So how we can make changes to that is, you go to this option which says select data, and now you can see that in the legend entry for the data series, we just have hours of coaching, but we also want to add total mistakes as well. So for that, what I'm going to do is go to add, and the first series name is going to be total mistakes, which is basically for the data series to be plotted on x-axis. In the series value, it is going to be all of these cells for this particular column. Now series y values, it is going to be the next column values right here. And the series bubble size, which is basically the radius, is going to be the third column value, which is the reduced mistakes. So I'm going to select these cells, and now we can click on OK. And now you can see that in the legend entry for the data series, we have got the hours of coaching as well as the total mistakes. These two are the data series, and the third one, which is the reduced mistake, is basically our radius or the bubble size. And on the horizontal axis label, you can see we get these values plotted, which is nothing but the total mistake values are plotted on the x-axis. So this is our bubble chart. Now we already know we can add the chart elements. So if you want to add the chart title, just click on this plus icon, then go to chart title, and here you can add the chart title. So for now, I'm just going to write bubble chart. And then this is how you can create a 2D bubble chart. Now we also have a 3D bubble chart. So I'm just going to select this, go to change chart type. And the last option right here is a 3D bubble chart. So in case of 2D bubbles, we had circles. In case of 3D bubbles, we are having spheres. So this was all about scatter plots and bubble charts. So let's meet you in the next video. Thank you. Hello everyone and welcome to this video. So in this video, we are going to be discussing about the next kind of chart, which is the waterfall chart. Now a waterfall chart, it shows running total as the values are added or subtracted. So it is very useful to understand how the initial value is affected by a series of positive and negative values. For example, you can see here we have a data set where we have the initial revenue, okay, and then we have the cost of goods, then we have the gross margin, admin expense and net income. So what essentially is happening is that initially we had a revenue of 25,000 rupees. But from there, lastly, let's say after the first quarter, or we can say after the first month, we see that we are left with a net income of 15,250 rupees. Now, how did this decrease in the amount from 25,000 to 15,250 happened? That can be easily analyzed with the help of a waterfall chart. Now you can see in this data set that initially we had the revenue of 25,000. After that, there was some cost of goods that we had to pay from our wallet, and that's why this we have written in negative, as a negative quantity. Then we have, so this minus this, we have our gross margin. Okay, after this we again had to give some administration expenses which costed us around 1,250. So that also we had to give from our pocket only, and once we subtract this amount from 16,500, we are left with the net income of this. Okay, so with this data set we can actually create a waterfall chart. Now waterfall chart, this option you will easily find once you go to the insert tab in the ribbon. You get this option right here which says insert a waterfall chart. Now this is available in the later versions of Excel from 2016, but before that it wasn't available. So we will first see how we can create a waterfall chart from this option right here as well as without this option. Okay. So here we have the waterfall chart for this particular data set, but I will show you how we can create this from scratch. So what we are going to do is I'm going to delete this first. And since on this data set, I want to create the waterfall chart, so I'm just going to select it, go to insert, and here we have this option which says insert waterfall. And the first option here itself is the waterfall chart. Now we need to do some modifications here. So what we need to do is first you can just increase the chart size just so that it becomes more legible. Now we will just right click on the plot area, and here we get this option which says format plot area. And once we get this option, I'm going to select the first blue bar that we have here. Okay, and then here in the options you click on this, and here you get this option which says set as total. So I'm going to check this option and do the same for the next blue bar as well, set as total, and for this one as well, set as total. Okay, so now what happens essentially is that now you can see that all of these bars which are basically representing us the positive amount, they start from the 0. So what it tells me is that, so you can see that earlier what we had as the blue bar, they were representing the increase in the amount, whereas the orange ones represent the decrease in the amount. And since now we have represented all of these blue bars as total, we are getting all of these bars as gray. Now you can definitely change the color of each of this bar if you want. Like if I want to select this one, go to fill, and here I can just select a solid fill, and let's just choose the blue color. Okay. Similar to this one, we can again set this a solid fill, and let's give the blue color, and let's keep the final amount grayed. Okay. So what it tells me is that initially my revenue was about 25,000. Okay. Then there was a deduction of 8,500. Okay. And then the resulting amount now is 16,500. Even after that, we had a deduction of 1,250, and now the resulting final amount is the net income is 15,250. Okay, and you can just give a chart title here as well. Let's say we are calculating this for the first quarter, or let's say for the first month. So I'm just going to write here first month, and now you have got your waterfall chart ready. Now, in the earlier versions of Excel, where this ready-made option of creating a waterfall chart was not available, how can we create this kind of a chart? So we can actually use a stacked column chart. So if you carefully notice here, all of these are nothing but columns. But the only problem that you will face here is the ones that are marked in orange, they are not starting from the 0 position, but they are starting from a different position. Now what you can do is, if you imagine that below this orange data series column, if we have one more column right here, which is this one, if this fills the position right below this orange bar, like if I just consider that we get a blue bar right here. So let's say this part is this one right here. Similarly for this one as well, if we consider this grayish bar to come below this one, then we can say that we can actually convert this to a stacked column chart. So we will see how we can do this. So here we have two data series. One is this one, which is going to be visible, and one is this one, which I just draw here. So if we make this series, this data series invisible, then we are actually going to get the waterfall chart as desired. So let's see how we can do that. So what we will do is, first I will delete this chart, and now we are actually going to have two data series. One is going to be the invisible data series, okay, that I just discussed. So one I'm going to write is the invisible series, and one is going to be our visible series. Now the base value for this invisible series is going to be 0. Okay, so I'm just going to put 0 here first. And for the visible series, it's going to be this value right here. So initially this is going to be 25,000. Then we have 16,500. And then we have 15,250. Okay. And next we need to plot the dip. Okay. So from 25,000 to 16,500, this dip value now we need to be able to plot. So first what we will do is, we will just take this data set. Okay. And we will go to insert, then go to a stacked 2D column chart. So now you can see that we can actually see that all of these columns are starting from 0, and here we have got the values plotted. The first column stands still 25,000, then we have 16,500, and then we have 15,250. Okay, and now we will be plotting the dips from 25,000 to 16,500. We need to now be able to plot this dip. So in this case, now the invisible series, then it will start from this value, which is 16,500. Okay, so if I just put 16,500 here, and the visible series is now going to start from this negative value. So I'm just going to put 8500 here. So you can see that this value is now stacked. So we have got a blue column which is stacked below the orange column. And if I just select this blue column, and if I just make it transparent, so I'm just going to give no fill. So now you can see that we are getting somewhat similar to the waterfall chart. And yet again, we can change the color of this one. So if I just want to show every dip using the blue color, what I will just do is go to fill, then solid fill, and then apply the blue color. So you can see that we are getting, or we are going somewhat near to the waterfall chart. Similarly here, what we will do is, The baseline for the invisible series for this particular column is going to be this value right here. So it's going to be 15250. And for the visible series, it's going to be this negative value here, which is 1250. Okay. And now again, if I hit enter, you can see that yet again, the blue column is tagged below the orange one. And now I can just select this and select no fill so that it turns transparent. Okay. And now I can just change the color of this column to blue. So I'm just going to go to again fill, then solid fill, and then blue. And now you can see we are actually getting the waterfall chart that we earlier had. So this is how you can create your waterfall chart using the stacked column chart in case you don't have the option of creating a waterfall chart. So again, like we were doing, if we wanted to change the total bars color to something else, so I will just select the final column here, then go to solid fill, and then we can change its color to gray. So this is going to represent the total, the net income value, and the blue ones are all the ones in which the value is depreciating, and the orange ones are the initial value or the positive values. So here we have got the waterfall chart that was created using the stacked column chart. This you can use if you're using Excel 2013 or the earlier versions. And now we will just quickly compare this chart with the one that was created using the waterfall chart option. So you can see that this is exactly the same, only difference is that you can now make changes to the horizontal axis labels. So you can, we have already seen how we can make those changes. So this was all regarding this video. You can still add other elements, like if you want to add the data labels, you can do that. In that case, you're going to get the values. If you want to add the axis titles, you can do that. So this was all about waterfall chart that I wanted to discuss. I hope this video was useful. Let's meet in the next one. Thank you. Hello everyone and welcome to this video. So in this video, we will be discussing about something called a sparkline. Now, what is a sparkline? It's basically like a mini chart that is contained in a cell itself. Okay. So like you can see that here we have some data. Let's say that over these months, we have got the number of units sold for pens, for pencils, and we also have an abstract quantity, which is a score. Okay. There is no relation between these parameters. We are just taking three random parameters. So what you can see that in this cell here, we have a mini chart, which is basically a mini line chart, and this is called a sparkline. Even this one here, which is a mini column chart, is also a sparkline, and this one here is also a sparkline. Okay, so whenever, let's say, you want to include small charts but you don't want the elaborate chart, you just want it to be present in a very small and concise way, just to maybe, let's say, depict an abstract trend in the data, in those cases you can include sparklines in your Excel reports. Now, since this is a very minimized version of a chart, it's going to have limited functionality. It is not going to have all the options that we had in case of charts, but yet if you want to just add that kind of a professional finesse, that you just want to be able to highlight the trend or highlight the change in the data over time with the help of this kind of a small mini graph, you can do that. So we will see how we can create these sparklines. So we already have created these three here. I'm going to clear them. So how to clear the sparkline? What we can do is we are going to select the cell, go to this tab which says sparkline, and here we get this option which says clear. So I'm just going to click on clear, selected sparkline, and you can see that the sparkline has disappeared. Same for this one here. I'm going to select both the cells, go to the sparkline tab, click on clear, selected sparklines, and now these two have been removed. Okay, so we will see how we can create a sparkline. So what we are going to do is I'm going to select the first set of data right here, which is basically the sales of pens over these months, and we can go to insert and we will find the sparkline options right here. Okay, you can see sparklines written, and we have three kinds of sparklines. So first we will be looking at the line kind of sparkline. So I'm going to select it here. And now first you need to select the data range. So you can already see that we have got this range of data selected. Okay, and now you need to select the location where you want to paste that sparkline. So since I've already told you that the entire sparkline is going to be contained in one single cell, I'm just going to, let's say, select this particular cell right here. And now if I click on OK, you can see that we have got our sparkline in this cell. Okay. Now just to make sure that this is similar to the line graph, just the minimized version, what we can do is we can also insert a line chart. So we already know how to insert charts. Go to insert, and there we have this option. We can just go to recommended charts. We are getting the line chart recommendation right here. I'm going to click on OK. And now you can see that this is similar to the one that is right here. Even you can actually see the dip in the trend. Okay. So this is basically your main line chart, and this is the minimized version of this line chart. So we don't want the chart right now. I'm going to delete it. And also, since this is contained in a cell, anytime I increase or decrease the cell width, or let's say the height, you can see that the sparkline is going to occupy the entire cell space. Also, what you can do is, let's say if we merge multiple cells together, so I'm just going to click on merge cells. You can see that the sparkline is going to occupy all of these cells. Okay. So we are just going to unmerge them for now. So just click on that cell, go to the unmerged cell options, and I'm just going to decrease the cell width and height. So next we are going to look at a different kind of a sparkline. So let's say that I select this data set right here, which is the sale of pencils over these time period. So what we're going to do, again go to insert, and here we have the next kind of sparkline, which is a column sparkline, quite similar to the column chart. So again, the data range is going to be these selected cells, and for the location, I'm going to select this new cell where I want the sparkline to be pasted. Click on OK, and now you can see that we have actually got a mini version of the bar chart. So you can change the bar color, the marker color, the sparkline color. All of these different design options are available for sparklines as well. And lastly, we are going to look at the third kind of sparkline, which is basically the win or loss. So if I just go to insert, having these cells selected, here we have a win or loss, or we can say a positive and negative sparkline. Okay. So what happens once I select this? First, we will select the data range. So you can see these set of cells are selected. Now for the location, I'm going to select this cell right here. Click on OK. And now you can see that we have got this win or loss sparkline inserted. Now what it essentially does is that all the positive values or the positive magnitudes are going to be depicted in these blue columns. So if I just expand the cell width and height, you can see the blue bars are nothing but the positive magnitudes, and the red one is basically the one which is in negative. So you can just consider that here we have an imaginary line, and all the positive magnitudes are represented above this imaginary line in blue color, whereas the one which is negative, it is represented in below the imaginary line in red color. Okay. Now, the difference between a column or a bar chart and this kind of a win or loss sparkline is that in case of the column sparkline, the altitude or the height of each column or bar is a representation of the value, okay, magnitude or the value. Like here we have the lowest value, and that's why its corresponding column is the least in height, whereas this one has the highest magnitude and it has the longest column. Okay. But in this case, there is the height of these bars is irrelevant. The only idea that we can have from here is that whether the magnitude this particular bar is representing, whether it is positive or negative. And if it is blue and above that imaginary line, then it's a positive magnitude. If it's below, then it's a negative magnitude. So these were all about sparklines that I wanted to discuss. This is all for this video. Let's meet you in the next one. Thank you. Hello everyone and welcome to this video. In this video, we will be discussing about map charts. Now this is a special kind of chart that is available only in Excel 2019 and above versions. In this, what happens that whenever you want to plot any geographical data on the map, it can be the country map or continents map, or even in a country, if you have the states data, you can plot that as well on the country map. So whenever you have such geographical data, you can plot the data for those geographical regions on a map chart. Okay. Now, an important thing is that you need to be connected to the internet in order to be able to use a map chart, because it's going to derive some data from the internet as well. For that, the internet connectivity is very essential. So we will see how we can create a map chart. So here we have actually the first 15 economies. Okay, first 15 nations with their highest economies. So the first column is basically those nations or the countries, and the second column here we are actually considering the GDP as millions of USD or US dollars. Okay, so here we have the first 15 nations with their GDPs in millions of USD currency. Okay, so let's see how we can create the map chart. So what I will do is, like any other chart, first we will be selecting the data set, then go to insert, and here you're going to get this option which says maps. Okay, so I'm going to go with this one, which is the default filled map chart. So once I click on this, it's going to insert the map chart. So here you can see that I have got actually the map chart. Let me just increase the size. So now let's understand what is happening right here. Here we have got the entire world map, and since we are actually plotting the GDP, which is in millions of USDs, you can see in the legend here we are getting a gradient right here, which tells me this one right here is the lowest GDP that is to be plotted on the map. And here we have the highest value, and here we are actually having a gradient. Okay, so the lowest value is marked in the lightest blue color, whereas as we move upwards towards the greater value, the color deepens. Okay, now we can see that from our table, USA has the highest GDP. So you can see that the United States of America have been marked with the darkest blue color. Then we have China, then we have Japan, then we have India. So in this order, the first 15 countries with their highest GDP, they have been marked or they have been colored on this map. And definitely this is a decreasing order map, because, or decreasing order table, you can see that the one with the highest GDP, we are placing it first. Okay, now let's come to this map and let's see how we can format this map. So like any other map, we get the basic formatting options. Like if I just go to the fill, you can see that by default it's set to automatic, but I can also give a solid fill. Let's say I select something like this. So we are filling the background with a blue color. For now, I'm going to go with the automatic fill only. We can give a border. So let's just give a border. So I've given a solid line, color is black, and this is the width. You can increase or decrease the width. Okay. Then you can also add the chart elements. So I will click on this button, and here we get the data label. So I'm going to click on that. So what happens now, you can actually view the actual number over those countries. Okay, so now not only the countries are highlighted, but you can also see that we can see their actual values. Okay, also what we can do is, if I just select the chart right here, and here we get all the different options. So this is the plot area, which is basically inside our chart area, and here we can change the fill, the border color. But what is very important is the series, which is basically series millions of USD. This is the most important factor in this particular chart. Okay, this is the data series. So if I go to the third option right here, in the first section where we have series options, we have something called a map projection. Okay, now if you have knowledge about the different map projections, then you might use any other selection, but since most of us, we are not aware of what these options mean, so we are going to go with the automatic map projection. Then map area, this is important. So what happens in automatic, it is actually going to consider the entire world map. Like even if I just select the world here, it's going to give me the entire world map. But what happens, let's say we are having data concentrated to only a particular continent or only of a particular country, then in that case what we can do is we can just select this kind of option, that is only regions with data. In that case, it's only going to show those countries or those nations on the map which actually have data based on this table. Rest of the regions will not be visible in the map. So for now, we are just going to go with automatic. Okay. And then here we have the map labels. So by default, it's set to none. You can go with best fit only. Okay. Or we might just go with show all. So it's basically on the basis of map labels. Other than that, what we can do is we can definitely add the chart title. We can edit the title here. We can write something like top 15 economies. Okay. Next, let's say we want to edit the legend. We can do that as well. So you can see once I select this chart element, here we get the option for legend entry options. So we can change the fill, okay, the border. For the data series, that is for those countries where we are actually having the data, what we can do is just select those countries and go to series color. Okay. So for the data series option, so what we are going to do is, again, we can just select data series from here. Okay. And then again, we have this option which says series color. You can select this and you can see that we have a sequential 2 color applied, which is basically a gradient of the shade blue. What we can do is we can even change this. So let's say I want to change this from sequential 2 color to diverging 3 color. Okay. And now we can actually set the minimum, midpoint and the maximum coloring options. So let's say I want to color the minimum or the country which has the lowest value, let's say with light yellow. Okay. Then let's say the country which stands in the middle value, I want to color it with blue. Okay. And let's say the maximum value or the highest value, I want to color it with green. Okay. So now you can see that in this gradient, what happens, the leftmost point or the countries with the lowest in this table, the countries which are at the bottom of this table, they will be actually colored with a very pale yellow color. Whereas the countries which are in the middle of the table, that is, they are in the middle, they neither have the highest nor the lowest GDP based on these 15 nations. So they are colored blue, whereas the countries with the highest are colored green. So you can see that USA here is colored green. Next we have China, which is actually colored teal. Why so? Because it is lesser than United States, so it's less than green, but again it is more than Japan and Germany, so which are actually colored yellow. So we can see that they are colored yellow, whereas China, which is between these two, it is colored teal. So in this way we can also change the series color as well. Map charts, like we can plot them for countries or continents, we can also actually plot them for the states in a particular country. So here I'm just taking few of the states of India and we are actually seeing what is their growth in percentage from 2016 to 2017. Okay, so I haven't included all the states here. You can just go on and do that as your exercise. What I'm just doing is I am taking few of the states in an alphabetical order and we are seeing the growth percentage starting from 2016 to 2017. So what I can do is, again, I'm going to select this table right here, go to insert, then go to maps and insert the map chart. And now you can see, since we are just plotting the values for the states of India, only India is shown in the map chart. Okay. And only those states whose values we have in the table, those are highlighted based on their magnitude. So as we already know, higher the value, deeper is going to be the color, lower the value, lighter is going to be the color. Okay. And again, if I just go to the data series options, that is series, which is growth 2016 to 2017, and I go to the third option right here in series options, you can see that map projection. You can see that the map area is set to automatic. We can again, we have this option enabled right now, which is country or region. So earlier when we are working with the whole world map data, we will not be getting this. Excel has automatically understood that we are just now working with one country's data. It has enabled this option for us, which says country or region. So we can even select this. Then this is going to be the same as the automatic one, which essentially means that only the country for which the values we are going to plot, only that is going to be visible in the map. So this was all about map charts. We have already discussed that one limitation is that for map chart, you need to be, for using map charts, you need to be connected to the internet. Okay. Other than that, the latitude and longitude plotting is not possible in a map chart, which means that you cannot actually plot each and every geographical area. Like you will not be able to plot the streets and the the small places. It is not possible. You can only plot states and regions and countries or continents with the help of the map charts. So map charts will work on states and regions and cities, but it is not going to work on the latitude and longitude coordinates or the state addresses. So in case you want to pinpoint a particular state address, you will not be able to do that with the help of map charts. Only the greater geographical regions you can plot with such map charts. So lastly, I would like to say that what happens when you have two places with the same name. So the first criteria for plotting the values on a map chart is that the places should be distinct. But in case you have two places with the same name, in that case what you can do is you need to add one more column to the left of the table. Suppose there are two states with the same name, we need to add, or we can say suppose there are two countries with the same name. Okay, we need to add one more column to the left of the table, and that column should contain a higher value of distinguishing. Okay, so there should be a higher value that will help us to distinguish those two states or those two countries. So we can add the state column. So in that basis, we can distinguish or differentiate between the two same named countries. So this was all about map charts. Let's meet you in the next video. Thank you.